Mount Okepamo, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focused on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
And I am Anthony Sier. A pleasant welcome to Focus on Liberia. Of course, this is the hour of politics, and it's been a while, and I'm happy to be here. It's another analytical piece concerning the politics of our country, Liberia, and I will not stop saying the nation Liberia remains the focus of this presentation. And as our name suggests, a focus on Liberia, we are focusing on a country that needs so much help, and that is in political and economic peril, people. And the perilous situation we are in, sometimes people don't get to see it because we look at things in a very simplistic way. Well, this nation has a unique history, and one of the things that we can remind you in no time is the history of violence in our country. And we are all aware that there are so many reasons why we went to violence and experienced violence in a debilitating faction, and something that we should not return to anymore. But hey, folks, the topic for today's presentation is yet another suspend topic. President Boakai's decision to suspend the central bank governor. President Boakai on the 30th of July suspended J. Aloysius Talu, the central bank governor, that is the executive governor of the Central Bank of Liberia. Now, why are we discussing this? We want Liberians to understand, because there is a debate that the president's action to suspend the central bank governor was constitutional, was lawful. And there is another side of the debate where others are saying, no, the president is in error here. His action is unlawful. He's wrong constitutionally. And the president is in violation of the statute that creates the Central Bank of Liberia for its effective running. The president has abused power. Others are taking the argument or the debate even further. And as a media institution that is in the business of providing analysis and providing the necessary education for us to understand who is in the wrong or who is in the right, whether or not the wrong was committed, we are here with a presentation that will shed some light. Whether or not the president abused his power, whether or not the president was wrongful, or whether the president acted unlawful, and that those who are contending that the president is in error are right and the president is wrong. And why is that important? When a leader abuses power, it leads to something else. And Liberia is a country that have seen such thing, violence. When presidents who are in charge of the responsibility of enforcing the laws judiciously and fairly abrogate some powers to themselves and violate the constitutions and other statutes in our country, those things can lead to dissatisfaction. It can lead to citizens getting angry. And when they cannot get redressed, when they feel aggrieved, some of them tend to take matters into their own hands. This is something we have seen before in our nation's history. And that is why we are here to make a presentation so that our leaders and all of us to understand that that path is not a path we must ever tread again. And so our topic, President Boakai's decision to suspend the central bank governor. We have questions and we will do the analysis here. Folks, let's start with some questions to begin the analysis. Did President Boakai abuse his power as president of the Republic of Liberia? Is the suspension legal, constitutional, wrongful, or lawful? We want to know. Is the suspension fair, given that Talu is not the only governor at the Central Bank of Liberia? Answers to these questions will give us the first-hand understanding whether or not the president abused power or not, whether the suspension was legal or constitutional. So to the first question, folks, let's find the answer. Did the president abuse his power as president of the Republic of Liberia? The Constitution of Liberia gives the president the power to appoint. And in the Constitution, it is said that all those appointed by the president serve at the will and the pleasure of the president. Now, there are some that argue that the president can wake up today and say, I am firing all of my officials of government, and that the president will be constitutionally right to do so. And so, the same power the president has to appoint, that power is still with the president to suspend when the president deems it so necessary. In this case, President Boakai has an argument for the suspension of the central bank governor. According to the president, the suspension of the central bank governor is based on two things. Number one, because of an audit report that implicates the central bank governor and the central bank, that the central bank was not in compliance with how the central bank of Liberia should be managed for the benefit of the Liberian people, to ensure financial stability in the country. And that's the central bank governor, J. Alosha Talu, ahead of the bank, sat there and allowed all kinds of questionable transactions to take place at the central bank of Liberia, bringing to question the financial stability of the country, bringing to question the economic viability and stability of the country. And that constitute, according to the president, a security risk, a national security risk. So the president is saying he has acted to prevent what is a potential national security risk. Because if that bank fails, the Central Bank of Liberia, if it crumbles, the economy crumbles, and Liberia will be in peril economically and financially. And you do not want to have that on your hands. That is the president's argument, for which he made a decision to suspend the governor of the Central Bank of Liberia, J. Aloysius Talon. So the power to appoint also gives the president the right to suspend. That is what the president is saying. So the president acted on what he believes to be the power granted him by the Constitution of the Republic of Liberia. And that is why he did so. But here is the question now. Now that he has acted according to him based on the power given him by the Constitution, is that suspension legal? Is it constitutional? It is wrongful, or it is lawful? So for it to be constitutional, there's to be a constitutional backing for the president's decision. What article in the Constitution gives the president the right to act the way he acted? He's acting on the article of the Constitution that gave him the power to appoint, and that those appointments should serve as a will and pleasure. And when he's not certified as the chief executive of the country, it is his right to go and suspend and remove that person. Now, let us ask this question. Is the Constitution of Liberia enough to govern the country under the principle of what we call the rule of law? I repeat that question. Is the Constitution of Liberia sufficient enough to govern the nation Liberia in adherence to the principle of the rule of law? My answer is a no. And the question is why? Because is my answer. Because the Constitution, which is the organic law of Liberia, and we recognize the Constitution is the supreme law of the nation, and that all other laws are there to complement the Constitution, and that all other laws are subordinate to the Constitution. But we should understand that any article in the Constitution is a mandate. So the Constitution had extensions. If the Constitution says, let laws be created for the effective running of other commissions and agencies, it is the Constitution that is also given the power, the mandate. And those mandates and those powers must be respected. And here's why. So let us understand one thing. A country's constitution is a crucial foundation for establishing the rule of law. Mark that word, the rule of law. But it is not enough on its own to guarantee its achievement. Did you hear that? In any democratic society, the rule of law is there to enhance the Constitution so that men and women and leaders of the country, including the citizens, will subscribe and abide and conform to the rule of law. The rule of law is basically the catalyst for respecting and abiding by the Constitution. And so that is why it is said that the Constitution is not enough. Because what the Constitution has done is to lay out the framework, to set out into motion the bodies of governance, and also give him mandate to other laws for the effective running and governing of the state. That is what the Constitution has done. So a Constitution typically outlines the framework of a country governance structure, fundamental rights, and powers of various branches of government. That is the most profound fundamental power of the Constitution. And I repeat that. It outlines the frameworks of a country's governance structure, the fundamental rights in the country, the powers of various branches of government. And those branches of government have powers and responsibilities to enhance and achieve what the Constitution has laid out. So in order for the Constitution to be adhered to comprehensively, the rule of law is the catalyst, meaning that there are other laws the Constitution has mandated to be created through agencies and commissions. And those statutes mandated by the Constitution to enhance the Constitution must be respected by all in order for the Constitution to be abided. And there we achieve the rule of law. And so, folks, hear me well. However, several additional factors are responsible or necessary to achieve the principles of the rule of law. So, the argument here is that the president acted. And there are some leaders, scholars that say the statute is subordinate to the Constitution. But mind you, it is the Constitution that gave the right for the statute to be created. So the statute is an extension of the Constitution. In this case, there is an act that created the Central Bank of Liberia. The legislature makes the law. It is the very legislature that brought in force the Constitution. And the Constitution gave the right to the legislature to create other laws for the effective running and governance of the country. Now, it is important for us to bring this to your attention. Article 1 of the Liberian Constitution, which is key. And it says, all power is inherent in the people. All free governments are instituted by their authority and for their benefit. And they have the right to alter and reform the same when their safety and happiness so require. In order to ensure democratic governance, which responds to the wishes of the governed, the people shall have the right at such period and in such manner as provided for under the Constitution. Mark that word, under the Constitution, to cause their public servant to leave office and to fill vacancies by regular elections or appointments. So, folks, here is it. The legislature is a representation of the people. So in the Constitution, the first article is Article 1 that says all power is inherent in the people. Because we are in a representative government, a republic, not everybody will go in the house of politics called the legislature to represent themselves. Not everyone will go there. So the people elected individual to represent them. And the representatives of the people, the senators and the representatives are the one making the laws. They say all power inherent in the people. So when a legislation is passed, in this case, they are creating the central bank. It was created by the legislature. It was enacted into law through the representative of the people. In other words, the people of Liberia make the law creating the central bank. Hello? The law creating the central bank, how the central bank should be run, governed, was created by us, the people. And all power is inherent in the people according to the Constitution. Hello? So when the legislature made law, that law is being made by the people. The most powerful clause in the Constitution is Article 1. All power inherent in the people. That is the foundation of the execution of power, of the dispensation of power. So, the president of the republic has a responsibility to enforce the laws created by the people through the legislature. So any law created by the legislature must be followed, obeyed by the president. The president follows the mandate or implement the mandate of the people. The act creating the central bank were indirectly created by the people. And that is the Constitution. That is an extension of the Constitution. The president took oath to obey and abide by the Constitution. So if the Constitution says all power is inherent in the people, and the people in their wisdom creates a law called a statute, in this case, the Central Bank of Liberia, the act creating the Central Bank of Liberia, the responsibility of the president is to enforce and abide by that particular statute. For the statute is an extension of the Constitution, specific power given to the president by the people. So the president cannot say, well, the only thing that matters here is the power for me to appoint. The power for you to appoint has been given to you by the people. The power for you to follow the statute set into place or created to run the central bank is also another law in our country that the president must abide by. I talked to you about the principle of good governance. I mean, the principle of the rule of law. Rule of law is the catalyst for abiding by the Constitution. And I said to you, the Constitution is not enough to govern a country. That is why in the Constitution, we know that in Article 89, where the Constitution talks about the establishment of commissions, it says, the following autonomous public commissions are hereby established. A, the Civil Service Commission. B, the Election Commission. C, the General Auditing Commission. And it continues, the legislature shall enact laws for the governance of these commissions and create other agencies as may be necessary for the effective operation of the government. And so, the legislature in its wisdom created the Central Bank of Liberia. And mark the word, for the effective operation of that bank, the act was created, how that bank should be governed. The president elected by the people, and the people gave him that right, that privilege, to enforce all laws. The president is not to be selective. When the president was selected by the people, the president took oath that he will enforce the Constitution and all laws in Liberia. If the president want to only rely on the constitution, we'll have chaos on our hands. Chaos on our hands. In the constitution, it's clear that the people have the right to assemble freely at all times. Yet, for the effective governance of the country, to maintain stability, for the principle of good governance, it has been suggested that if individuals want to protest, to assemble peacefully, they should obtain permission. The government must be informed, and the government is under obligation to grant the people, because that right has been given to the people to assemble at all time. Except that the government must be informed, they must be in the know. Because some individuals are protesting, they want to use some part of the country. Other citizens who are not part of that protest might be impacted. So the government must be given the notice so that the government in turn will inform other citizens so that they can know what to do to prevent that issue from impacting them. Hello. So let's bring it home here, folks. Let's look at Article 2 of the Liberian Constitution. It reads, the Constitution is the supreme and fundamental law of Liberia, and its provision shall have binding force and effects on all authorities and persons throughout the Republic. Did you hear that? That the Constitution shall have binding force and effect on all authorities and persons throughout the Republic. It means that the president is not above the law. It means that even the governor of the central bank is not above the law. So if the Constitution has mandated the creation of an agency of government, and the Constitution also mandates how that agency should be run, a statute, which is a law created to say this is how you run the institution, the president must abide by that statute. The president cannot say the Constitution tells me to suspend, so I will suspend without respecting the statute mandated by the Constitution. That means the president is being selective in his execution and enforcement of what the Constitution says. Now, if the president does that, that president is being selective, and a president should not be selective in the application of the laws or in his enforcement of the laws in the country. For the Constitution is not enough to govern the country. Let me give you a practical example. The Constitution of Liberia calls for regular election every 6 years. The Constitution did not tell you exactly how elections in Liberia should be conducted. The Constitution did not give you all the specifics. So, an election commission was created by a statute that defined and laid out how elections should be conducted in the country. So, are you telling me the president should disregard how elections should be conducted in the country because that is a statute? No. The president is under obligation to abide by all laws in the country. And so Article 2 could not be so eloquent. And it reads, its provision shall have binding force and effects on all authorities and all persons throughout the Republic. It is the Constitution that says the legislature, that is a representation of the people. And remember, Article 1 says all power is inherent in the people. So the people made a law creating the central bank. And Article 2 is telling us the Constitution, the powers of the Constitution cut across all persons. The president is not an exception, must abide. Why did the president know the statute of the Central Bank of Liberia? The statute says the executive governor of the central bank and all other governors or deputy governors of the central bank can be removed only through an impeachment proceedings that will originate from the House of Representatives. That the only way you can remove the central bank governor, or I should say one of the ways you can remove the central bank governor, is say he should be impeached. And the impeachment proceeding should start from the House of Representatives. And then the Senate will be a jury and that person is removed. The time the Central Bank Act was created, it has granted the president the removal power. But when the law was reversed, the removal power was taken away from the president. So President Boakai does not have the power to bypass the statute that lay out how things should be done concerning the central bank and resort to tactics to remove the central bank governor. And here's the thing. Earlier, I asked three questions. One of which was, is the suspension fair given that Talo is not the only central bank governor? The central bank does not have only one governor. The financial malpractices that happen at the central bank, those financial malpractices were not committed only by the central bank governor, J. Aloysius Talo. So if the president, as he saw it necessary to act, should have acted on all the governors of the central bank. But the president chose just one person. Why? Why couldn't the president extend his action to all the governors who we know for sure are part and parcel, because not only one governor makes decision at the Central Bank of Liberia. We're talking millions of questionable transactions. I mean, transaction amounting to millions of dollars at the Central Bank of Liberia. So there must be accountability, and we agree. But you cannot hold one person accountable when there are more than one governor at the central bank who participated in what we know to be questionable financial transaction, dishing out money in the tune of 178 million United States dollars on the counter at the Central Bank of Liberia, based on what the other report has revealed. It can't be Talo alone doing that. The other governors must have involvement. So how could you just remove one person through suspension, which, according to the statute, is not the way to remove any member of the central bank governance? So is the president action lawful, constitutional, or unlawful? Now, let's bring it home. Let us understand that there are several factors that can undermine the achievement of what we call the principle of good governance. I mean, the principle of the rule of law. And why am I emphasizing the rule of law thing? President Boakai campaigned on rule of law. President Boakai promised that he will be a president who will abide by the rule of law. And when it comes to the rule of law states that the Constitution is not enough. The Constitution of Liberia is not the only laws in the country. If this man, the issues raised by the audit report are tantamount to criminality, why couldn't a criminal investigation be initiated by the government, maybe through the Justice Ministry, or through the LACC that have the prosecutorial power to investigate and bring criminal charges against the central bank governor. And that criminal charges against you be enough to say, look, there are criminal charges against you. Maybe you should resign to answer to these questions, or he should be taken to court, or a writ of arrest can be brought against him because of the criminal charges against him from the court of law. And that would be a legal way of getting him out of the Central Bank of Liberia. But to say the president has the power to suspend, and suspending somebody is the same as removing the person because the person is no longer on the job. And this is a legal debate. There are some legal scholars that argue if you suspend somebody, it's the same as removal. Because when someone is removed, the person is not physically present at that position to do or carry out the duties they were being assigned. So whether remove or suspend, the person is no longer present to carry on the functions of that particular position. So it is the same as removal. Some legal scholars disagree, and they are accurate on that. But here's the thing. The Supreme Court of Liberia at one point gave a ruling that suspension is the same as removal. And once the Supreme Court gives a ruling, it becomes a precedent. And from what we hear from the legal scholars, precedent sometimes in law, especially a ruling from the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, must be respected at all times. So we are looking at the factors that might undermine the principle of good government, the rule of law. One is effective institution. Another is legal framework. Let's talk about those two quickly for you to understand. Effective institution, strong, independent, and impartial institutions such as courts, law enforcement agencies, regulatory bodies are all essential to enforcing laws and upholding the Constitution. Hello, the central bank is an institution, and they are saying that for the principle of rule of law to be achieved, we must have effective institutions. To have effective institutions, the institution must have statutes that govern those institutions. And those statutes must be followed. So the best way to handle the matter at the central bank concerning removal of any of the central bank governors, use the principle, use the statute governing the Central Bank of Liberia. And the statute says if you want to remove the man, go to the legislature, draw up an article of impeachment, and then remove the man. That's what the law says. Another way you can do it is, if you know that a man has committed any criminal offense, bring a criminal indictment against the man. And so if the man is charged with criminality, the man can no longer serve when he's being accused of crime. There should be a writ of arrest for alleged criminal act. And when you have the evidence, the man can be removed. Because anybody serving in any position that is tenure, that person can be removed for cause. There must be a cause to remove the person. And one of such is criminality, crimes, corruption, abuse of power. And this is what the other report is pointing to. So the government of Joseph Boakai have gone further. So they believe that the issues alerted in the other report are significant enough to remove the man, and these things are tantamount to criminality. Go further. Why you afraid of? You trust the other report. We're talking millions of dollars here. Questionable transaction. Putting the financial health of the country in jeopardy here. And then you are wasting time to bring criminal indictment against the individual. That's another legal way to have removed the person. But for the president to not abide by the statute, to not to abide by the clause for how a central bank governor should be removed, some legal scholars are saying the president failed to abide by the rule of law and the president has abused his power. Now, what is the rule of law? Some of you might be asking. The rule of law is a principle of governance that all individuals, institutions, and entities, public and private, including the state itself, the government itself, are accountable to laws that are publicly promulgated, equally enforced, independently adjudicated. Hello? Sorry for the big English here. I read that again. The rule of law is a principle of governance that all individuals, everybody in the country, all institutions, all entities, all public and private institutions, including the state itself, the government itself, are accountable to the laws that are publicly promulgated. The act creating the central bank was created by the national legislature, was promulgated. In other words, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has announced in Liberia that the law creating the Central Bank of Liberia is the law of the land when it comes to how we run the Central Bank of Liberia. So any matter concerning the Central Bank of Liberia, we must follow the law creating the Central Bank of Liberia. And the principle of good governance is clear. They say, for the governance of all individuals, the president is not an exception. He cannot do any other, or he cannot do otherwise. And so when the president wants to exercise his right as the chief executive concerning this institution, the principle of good governance also says the rule of law is a principle of governance that affect all institutions and all entities of government. And it said that they must be equally enforced. Mark that word, equally enforced. So the president cannot just rely on the constitutional power that say you can appoint, and anybody you appoint serve at your will and pleasure. When the central bank law was created, was enacted into law, was promulgated, it became the law of the land, and that all other persons and all other institutions in the country must abide by how the central bank should be handled. Is the president abiding by how the central bank should be handled here? Of course not. He's not doing that. He is only relying on this statement that, any other person appointed by the president serves at the will and pleasure of the president. It's almost like saying what the president will be right. Like in the middle of an election, let's say the election commissioner is in the middle of the election trying to announce the election result. The president can come and say, "Oh, you are fired." Really? There's a way to remove positions in our government that are tenure. And these tenure positions were created by Joseph Boakai and the Unity Party. When the president started violating tenure positions, the matter went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that tenure are constitutional. That there are laws mandated by the Constitution that created these autonomous agencies, granting tenure position to the heads of those agencies. And these laws must be equally enforced according to the principle of the rule of law. And President Boakai spent campaigning that the rule of law. Almost every statement President Boakai made when he was in opposition was rule of law, rule of law, rule of law. Is this how you abide by the rule of law? Because the principle of rule of law is saying all other laws in the country must be equally enforced. Equally, not selectively. Hello? So hear me well, folks. Let's look at the importance of the rule of law. This is very important. The rule of law calls for equality before the law. The rule of law ensures that everyone is treated equally in the eyes of the law. No one is above the law, not even government officials or lawmakers. Did you hear that? I state that again. On the principle of the rule of law, there is a cardinal principle that says equality before the law. And what is equality before the law? The rule of law ensures that everyone is treated equally in the eyes of the law. So all the governors at the central bank were now in compliance with the central bank statute, how they should operate the bank. All the governors, they engaged in questionable financial transactions, disbursing checks on the counter in violations of the financial or management laws. They are all guilty. But then the president is acting and poaching out one person unlawfully. What happened to the others? Because the principle is saying everyone should be treated equally in the eyes of the law. Is Talo being treated fairly? Is he the only one who the other report point to? And it said no one is above the law, not even the government or government official or lawmakers. So President Boakai must abide by this law. He's not above the law. The other governors at the central bank, they are not above the law. There's a way to remove them. All other laws must be respected equally. Now, there's another thing under the principle of the rule of law that they call protection of rights. And under the principle of protection of rights, the rule of law is crucial to the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. It provides a framework for individuals to exercise their rights and seek redress if their rights are violated. So, this man holds a turning position. To remove anybody on a turning position is must be by cause. There should be a due process. The due process, more than likely, is explained in the statute. In this case, they said to remove any governor of the central bank, it should be through an impeachment proceeding. The president did not follow that. Hello? Did the president follow that? So now, when the first group of people went to the Supreme Court, because the president removed them unconstitutionally, unlawfully, the Supreme Court gave a ruling that the president was in error, that the people serve a turning position, there's a way to remove them, and for the president to suspend them, that was wrong. The Supreme Court gave a ruling. President Boakai had a press statement, I think press conference, and welcomed the decision of the Supreme Court and said that he respected the decision of the court. But that President Boakai the next day went and suspended the people in violation of the Supreme Court or in defiance and disobedience of the highest court ruling in the nation. And here he claims he's a man of rule of law. So President Boakai is repeating the same thing right here in this matter. Now, another thing when it comes to the rule of law is what we call check and balances. The rule of law provides a system of checks and balances to prevent abuse of our power. It ensures that power is not concentrated in the hands of few. Hello. So we're talking about checks and balances. We're talking about the separation of powers, and another thing they call the principle of separation of powers. Each branch of government has a responsibility defined by our laws. This statute is saying to remove the central bank governor, there are ways it can be done. You can do it through the legislature. So it is the legislature that is given the power by our constitution to remove a central bank governor for a cause. It is not the president through a suspension. So what President Boakai has done, he has removed a central bank official. In the principle of separation of powers, it is the legislature that has that power to do so, not the president. So the president has abrogated to himself a function assigned to another branch of government that he has executed while at the executive branch of government when he does not have that power to do so. That's what makes it unlawful and unconstitutional. Hello? So, folks, if you ask the question whether the president has abused his power, if you look at the check and balances and the principle of separation of powers, the president is completely in error here. For the law spell out how a central bank governor shall be removed and who to remove the central bank governor. Now, saying the president does not have the power to do so, he could have gone to the legislature and complained that I think I have sufficient reason and evidence for which that man should be removed because he has done X, Y, Z. These constitute cause for removal. So, honorable legislature, can you act? The president should have done so. When the president, the executive branch of government, submits the budget to the legislature, it is because it's the legislature that has the power to approve the budget. That's why when the president, the executive branch, drafts the budget, the executive branch sends it to the legislative branch of government. The separation of power, because the executive branch knows that it does not have the power to allocate resources in the country. It is the legislature that has the power. But the executive responsibility is to draft the budget for it to be approved by the legislature. The separation of power. Why the president can't go and just approve the budget? He can't, because the Constitution does not give him the power. The very Constitution mandates that to remove the central bank governor, it should be done by the legislature. But yet the president has done so. That is why when it comes to checks and balances and the principle of separation of powers, under the rule of law, it says the rule of law provides a system of checks and balances to prevent the abuse of power. It ensures that power is not concentrated in the hands of one. So President Boakai now, he has the power to appoint. He has done so. He does not have the power to remove, but yet he has done so. That power rests with the legislature. This is an abuse of power, and this is the abuse of the separation of powers. Another principle on the rule of law is the promotion of fairness. The rule of law promotes fairness. And fairness is a very important ingredient in the dispensation of justice, in the administration of a country, in the governance of a country under the principle of good governance and rule of law. So fairness, the rule of law ensures that justice is done in a fair and impartial manner. It promotes transparency and fairness in the administration of justice. So the man was just suspended, just like that. Where's the fairness when he's not the only one who is being revealed from audit report concerning the dubious financial transaction that took place at the central bank? Is he the only one? No. So where's the fairness? The rule of law calls for fairness. Where's the fairness here, Mr. President? Is he the only one? Do you really believe he's the only one? Our understanding is that one of the deputy governors resigned secretly. Maybe that person knows that they feel guilty of this serious questionable financial transaction that we're talking about, as evident by the other report. Clearly, there is serious and significant indication of crimes being committed here. The president has a legal way to go about this. One is, as described in the statute, to draw on an impeachment proceeding through the legislature, which he failed to do and took matters into his own hands by removing the person, the governor. That responsibility is with the legislature to do so. That's not the work of the president. The president could use bring criminal investigation against this man. And if he's found guilty, we even pray for a writ of arrest based on evidence that they may have gathered. But to resort to national security thing is questionable. Now, another thing is that the president can have executive powers, but even the executive power has limitation. The president's executive power does not extend to suspension. No, it does not extend to suspension. You cannot suspend anything because you have executive powers. No, it does not extend that, in my opinion. So let's look at some of the things that actually affect the achievement of this rule of law that we're talking about. And let me remind you, the rule of law is the catalyst, is the principle, is the vehicle through which you can achieve, the application of the Constitution in its entirety. For the Constitution is not enough. There are other laws in the country. For the effective governance of the country, you cannot be selective. The principle of good governance, the principle of the rule of law, requires that all the laws in the country are equally important, and you should not enforce them selectively to suit your own interest, because if you do so, it will constitute the abuse of power. All right. So let's look at those things very quickly. Number one, the lack of awareness and understanding, meaning that many people may not fully understand their rights and the laws that govern them. This lack of awareness can lead to violation of the rule of law. Maybe the president is not aware that there is a statute that created the Central Bank of Liberia, and so you got to follow what the law says if you have any matter at the Central Bank that you have to handle. There's a way to do it, and that way is to follow the statute. Apparently, the president is not aware. That's why he acted in this manner. So lack of awareness or lack of understanding can lead to this. This may be the case with the president. That is a probability. Another issue is corruption. Corruption can undermine the rule of law by allowing those with power and money to manipulate the legal system to their advantage. How does corruption apply in this case? Why is it, some corruption people say, oh, it's just money. As soon as the president suspended this person, the president in no time appointed somebody to join the other, allegedly corrupt governance at the central bank. What difference is that going to make? You just appointed somebody. Immediately, as soon as you suspended this person, you appointed another person to join the allegedly corrupt governance at the central bank. What difference does it make? Why is President Boakai rushing to appoint somebody to this place where corruption is massive? And this person now is joining other corrupt individuals in the place. Would this not undermine the principles of rule of law here. Another is an effective judicial system. A slow, overburdened judicial system can delay justice, leading to the lack of faith in the rule of law. Now, the Alosha Talu has gone to court because he's saying, hey, I'm telling you, other people were telling the Supreme Court had ruled, yet President Boakai will not abide, so I'm going to court. Now, the justice in chambers, Yusuf Kabar, listening to the argument and he reserved ruling. There is a precedence here. This is the same very matter. Why is he wasting time for? He should give a ruling. You cannot remove anybody who is turning you without cause and without giving the due process. You can't do that. So this is a simple matter. But here we have it. Another one is political interference. The rule of law can be compromised when political leaders interfere with the judiciary and use the legal system to oppress opposition. Talu was appointed by President Wian. All the turning position individual President Boakai has been attempting to remove illegally, and I use the word illegally based on the Supreme Court ruling, are all members of the former administration who are associated with the CDC. So Boakai sees this man as an opposition. So he wants to get him out of there. This is a political interference. There's a legal way to remove the man without injecting politics in it. The law is clear. You can remove the man through cause. You can remove the man, by bringing an indictment against the man. If you think that the man has done, carry on criminality, you can do so. But now you're using a force. That's not a way to remove the man. Another is inequality and discrimination. The rule of law requires that all individuals are treated equally. However, discrimination and inequality can prevent certain groups from accessing justice. So the key thing we need to recognize here is that the rule of law requires all individuals to be treated equally. Several governors, they all engage in this act, but the president is saying, I'm going for Talu. Why Talu? Is he being discriminated against yet? He can make that case that this is discrimination. Because if this happened, he's not the only one who did so. Why is he the only one being punished? So another is the lack of political will. Implementing the rule of law often requires a political will. Without a reform may not be prioritized or implemented effectively. So the president needs to exercise the political will here. But I'm not sure that is the case. And so, folks, I conclude this presentation. The law is clear. For our country to be governed effectively, for us to be in adherence to the principle of good governance and the rule of law, all the laws in our country are important. There's a reason why we made the laws. The Constitution says all power is inherent in the people. And the legislature is a representation of the people in the government. So when the people make a law, say this is how the institution should be run, the president must abide by that. And Article 2 said, all persons, all individuals, the Constitution should have binding force and effect on them. All individuals and all institutions. Institution in this case is the central bank. The statute creating the central bank is the law to use concerning matters about the central bank. And the president, as an individual, he's not above the law, must abide by that statute. The Constitution also talks about the separation of powers. The roles of the different branches of government are defined. The executive enforces the law, and he must enforce the law impartially, or with impartiality, effectively, and not selectively. and he must enforce the laws equally. You can't hang on to one, for one is not enough. The Constitution of Liberia alone is not enough. If we only rely on the Constitution of Liberia, there will be chaos, for we will not know how to run the finance ministry. We will not know how to run the central bank. We will not know how to run the election commission. We will not know how to run all the other agencies of government, because the Constitution does not tell you how to run those agencies. The Constitution only created or mandated that those agencies be created, and the Constitution mandated how they should be run. So those laws creating those agencies are an extension of the Constitution that must be equally enforced and respected to constitute a comprehensive respect for the Constitution. For these laws are extensions of the Constitution. If that's under the Constitution, the president is doing a baba, but then when somebody commits a criminal act, there's nothing you can do about it, because you are relying on the Constitution, and the Constitution of Liberia is silent on how to deal with a criminal. Does the Constitution tell you how to deal with a drug addict or someone who is abusing drugs? Does the Constitution of Liberia tell you that? How to deal with somebody who is abusing drugs or using drugs in the country? No. There are laws created to deal with that. Those laws are equally part of our laws, and they must be equally respected. And the executive branch of government, through the president, enforces all our laws. All, not some. So, for the president to not enforce the statute on governing removal of the central bank governor, and to use this power that they serve at my will and pleasure, so I can suspend in violation of the statute how the central bank should be governed. And when the Supreme Court has already ruled that tenure is constitutional, when someone has a tenure position, the person will continue to serve for that tenure or for that time period. And the way to remove the person, they must be as cause. The president has found a cause in my judgment. Now he should go through the due process to remove any such person. When the president did not do that, the Supreme Court called the president to order, say, you are wrong. Tenure is constitutional. The president said, okay. But then the president summoned us and suspended people at LTA. That was a violation of the Constitution. In this case, he violated the principle of the separation of powers. The president does not have the power to remove central bank governor the way he did. There are ways to do it, and the president has those ways to his disposal. There are laws in Liberia that he has to his disposal to use, one of which is the act creating the central bank concerning removal, letting him use it. And another law is the criminal law of Liberia. You can use it to remove somebody. Why couldn't the president, with all the experience, use these laws to achieve what he believes is the right thing to do, instead of abrogating a responsibility of another branch of government to himself and acting in this manner? It's unconstitutional, it's wrongful, and it's unlawful. And the president who preached good governance throughout his time in opposition should do well to abide by this principle of the rule of law and good governance. That is the way to go. Really, folks in CDC are accusing the government and the president of witch hunting them, because all the people that the president has brought indictment against, these people that the president removing unconstitutionally, they are all members of the past CDC government. Now, what we see here is that CDC has printed t-shirts. President Weah had a press conference the other time that they will resist. T-shirts have been printed by CDC, over 10,000 t-shirts. Members of CDC are trolling to CDC party headquarters. They are going to other counties. They have already launched their campaign, resist them. Why is this happening? It could be because this government is not thoroughly implementing what it's supposed to be doing in a very transparent way. They've been selective here. They've been selective because not only CDC officials have been accused of corruption from 2018 to 2023. There are some members of the United Party who are being accused of corruption. We started seeing corruption from inaugural day and all that. What's wrong with that? They abused the funds for the inauguration. The president, had commissioned an audit on an investigation. Where's the investigation report? Why the investigation report going on? The very president released a statement commending the people who carry out the inauguration, or who planned the inauguration and executed the inauguration, at which the microphone could not even work. We're talking about $650 million. Over $500,000 was given to these people for them to spend. A single microphone that would not cost even $100 US could not function. Embarrass our guests. In some instances, some people didn't have water. They put the people outside in the heat to the point that the president could not complete his speech, embarrass the country in front of our foreign guests. Those people tamper with the money. The president was furious and he said, well, we'll investigate this. The very president blew for another money, I don't remember the figure, that he was giving to all the 73 electoral districts, not 73, 103 electoral districts in the country to celebrate his inauguration. I believe each electoral district is supposed to get about 10,000, I don't remember the figure. But then Unity Party, as a political party, went into that money and took some of the money, as though all members of Unity Party are now part of the 173 electoral districts in the country. They wanted money for themselves to celebrate. Why they couldn't celebrate with the districts? For they are part of the district. Every member of Unity Party belongs to a district. But they said, no, we are party official. We got to enjoy too. They took some of the money. That is corruption. For the president was clear, this money is intended for district to celebrate. What happened to that money? Is it not corruption? Where's the accountability? Where is the accountability? The inaugural funds that government money on. Where's the accountability? Anyway, folks, this is how we will come to the end of yet another edition of the Hour of Politics here. I focus on Liberia. As always, my name is Anthony Sie, and I thought to bring you another debatable issue that brought us on legality, but I thought to use my own analytical skills here my analytical skills to dread through what is more like a legal debate, but also brought us on, the principle of good governance and the principle of the rule of law. And in my judgment, the president has been selective. The president is not abiding by the principle of good governance and the rule of law here. All the laws in the country are important. The president should not be selective in the enforcement of our laws in the country. And if the president wants to abide by the principle of good governance, the president must be a respecter of all our laws in the country, for he was elected by the people. And it is said, all power is inherent in the people. Every single piece of law in the country was created by the people, and the president is under obligation to enforce all laws equally and not selectively. And the president must be fair to everybody in the country. For all people are equal under the law. Governors can misbehave at the central bank, then you push out one person. The law say turning positions are constitutional. There's a way to remove them. You can grant them due process, but you fail to grant them due process. Supreme Court rule, and you say, to hell with Supreme Court, I'm doing my own thing anyway. That is an abuse of power, and this is unnecessary. The president should correct course and do the right thing, for he was elected to do so. The song says we are all Liberians, and that song takes us home right now. Until we catch you again this evening for our Friday night debate, my name is Anthony Shea saying bye-bye and enjoy your day.
We are Liberians.